brings life into a complete region. NALCS MVP, but also at one point maybe the best player in the world when he was winning World Championships. This guy is hype, but mainly on those defensive support options, Vedi.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree with you, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw another ban towards the bot side of the map. It was a strategy that the Fongfu Buffaloes attempted during the play-in stages, and unfortunately they couldn't convert it into a win, but we may see a different case of that in today's game. Oh, interestingly, we're actually going to see the Jace ban come towards Impact. This could suggest that an Akali priority comes out from the side of the Flash Wolves, but with the Rise still up and available, it was something that you could imagine both Hanabi and Rather playing as well.
Yeah, that's where you have to start going down the tier list again, right? Rise, Aurelia, Akali, all up. Nautilus as well, if you value it as that flex pick. Maybe the last one, Hecarim, however, have not seen it as much. I would once again like to see something aggressive here. I want the Akali or the Aurelia. Hanabi is such a pressure sponge when he gets one of those champions.
But as you've already said, Spawn, when it comes to Flash Wolves, they prioritize the bot lane in draft, and it is a first pick Kaisa for Betty.
And after what we've seen in game one, this is terrifying if you're a Flash Wolves fan, because we've seen that slow, methodical group up for teamfight tempo is not currently the meta.
Yeah, it certainly is not the case. But the one thing we can say for sure is that Flash Wolves have gotten themselves a comfort champion down towards the bot side of the map. This Kaisa is Betty's most played champion. It's something that he performs extremely well on. And even in their loss against Vega, I seem to recall him having a very impressive scoreline and still doing what he can. So I think that for Flash Wolves, it's very much about comfort, whereas for Team Liquid, they are going for those flex pick options. They are grabbing that Akali early on, but it's also to take it away from Hanabi, who has shown a lot of proficiency on the champion.
And just very quickly to put some numbers to it, 15 games played for Betty's Kaisa with a 60% win ratio. The Akali for Team Liquid has been seen 3 times this year, twice by Jensen, once by Impact. And Jensen, obviously running it into Fongfu Buffalo, didn't look to be the most proficient in that game. And of course, we round out the phase 1 pick. It is the Braum. It's that defensive support that you like to see on CoreJJ.
Yeah, it certainly is also one of the better answers into Kaisa. Kind of denies the fly into the back line if you just tag her once. This is exactly what we saw out of Flash Wolves regionally, however. It looks like they have taken that step back. Would expect to see a jungle pick up here, something like a Lee Sin. For Bugi there in the jungle, they did mention a little bit more solo queue-esque, a little bit more try and run over your team early and set up the plays around the map, is kind of the one statistical or like wild card factor of an otherwise pretty composed Flash Wolves lineup.
Yeah, and as you predicted, Spawn, there's the jungle pick. It will be the Nocturne, though. I don't like this pick into Akali very much. I think it's a very difficult lane to gank, and I think it's a difficult lane to play around as well. However, if the assumption is that Xmithie will go towards the Lee Sin, one of his most played champions during the regular season, in terms of the 1v1, it does very well in terms of ability to duel against him early.
Probably the strongest bottom lane, however, going to be handed over to TL, and they've been very hot analysts at the moment saying how good this TL bottom lane can be. Now they've given over lane bullies. Sure, it is going into Galio. Galio stops a lot of that aggression just by having so much push early on in the game. Everything he does is AoE. He's also going to be a target support. But just the anti-threat he has with the AoE taunt, interested that they would run something so lane dominant into a Kaisa Galio.
Yeah, I think it's clearly a confidence-based decision. They want to make DoubleLift one of the big carries. They want to have a lane that they can actively play around. Now, we have to recall that Sejuani is still up and available for both these teams. It's something that Xmithie has played a lot in the past, and he even played it in the play-ins to some pretty impressive effect. And now we're just seeing the Rise being taken off the board, deny that away from the Flash Wolves. We could also potentially see, looking at other lanes, they may look to take the Aurelia away, something that the Flash Wolves don't typically go for, but if you're looking at flex picks to deny, just take that one off the board.
And of course, with the cannon taken out, the pool, it is Impact's most played champion over from the LCS. These two teams stylistically are fairly similar. They are on the slower end of gameplay. They like to have those laning phases that get extended and, you know, contest around those objectives. So that's going to start to influence what champions I'm expecting in phase 2.
However, it is the polish of Team Liquid that I think gives them the slight edge in this case. We saw against AHQ in the semifinals that Flash Wolves forced overly much around those objectives. It either dragged the game out for longer than necessary in a couple of the matchups. That series went to all 5 games, was a little bit more shaky in some of the mid-game team fights. I think that right now, Liquid's bottom lane would be incredibly happy. If they can get themselves, as you mentioned, a tank jungler, I'm even looking at something like the Gragas or the Sejuani. Sejuani just banned away.
Yep.
For Xmithie, they've got the perfect bottom lane to be able to transition around to those early game objectives.
I think so. And the The one thing we can say right now for Flashwolves composition, very dive-focused, very good at just going in and fighting, which means that around these objectives that you already talked so much about Spawn, that Flashwolves like to play around, it's easy for them to actually force these fights. Now, the Trundle is actually going to be locked in right now. Now, we would assume that this is in the jungle position, but it can be flexed up towards the top side of the map. Perhaps they're just waiting to see what the final pick is before deciding on that, but quite an interesting jungle pick coming out from the side of Liquid.
Yeah, and whilst Jat not here for the international tournament, his patch notes live on here with Trundle coming out, buffing up the tanks, has been buffed. Also with Pressy Attack is quite a good jeweler against melee champions around Scuttle Crabs, and I feel like this is what the pick is about, you know, denying that early vision, being able to protect his lane.
And of course, as a Jat stat would say, this is the first Trundle of MSI. Need to see exactly how Xmithie's going to handle this one, as we do anticipate that to land in the jungle. The last two picks, Flashwolves are leaning towards scaling, team fight. It's the Vladimir hover after the Azir lock-in, and this is the Flashwolves style of gameplay.
We on the same patch as what I just watched a second ago, because this looks very different. Big grouping, team fight, AoE, wombo combo coming out for the Flashwolves here. They do have shades of split push, however. Vladimir, late game in a side lane,
very like 1-4 kind of comp,
yep.
yeah. Now, looking at this draft, I would prefer to have the Akali up towards the top side of the map, have it into the Vladimir, because I know it can be a bit of a difficult matchup.
Did he just counterpick himself? Is that what we're seeing now?
I think the goal is to play around bot side of the map. I mean, the thing about the Gangplank is with the use of the ultimate, we've seen it multiple times from the side of Team Liquid, where they like to just invest resources into enabling DoubleLift and CoreJJ. I do agree. I think in the early laning phase, Gangplank can hold his own pretty well against the Vladimir, but as you said, the scaling is definitely going to go in Vladimir's favor as the game progresses.
And it's the hold its own that I have the problem with, Vedi, because that is the strongest team fighting top laner probably that exists in League of Legends right now. And they do have a very short range composition. If Hanabi gets towards that 2-3 out mark, he's going to have himself an Azir. You know, they can turn the lights out with Nocturne, the big flanks that come in. Hanabi not known for his team fighting at the moment. This is a guy that they prefer to leave out on an island and split push, but can now in this draft group up with their team. If TL don't get a massive early game advantage, the late game scaling out of Flashwolves right now is a big advantage.
I will say though that TL, if they do get the early game lead, they have options to be able to split up the map. With an Akali and a Gangplank, you could look to play on side lanes, and I do think that with an Akali, she can very easily hold her own against a Vladimir in the late game. It's a bit of a skill matchup because you can obviously hit a lot of those abilities through the Shroud, but still, I'm quite excited for this game. I think that the early game has no clear favorites right now.
No, not at all. I mean, draft-wise, obviously leans a little to Team Liquid, but they need to execute on the draft. Both of these teams qualifying through the MSI play-ins knockout stage, and a lot of pressure on both the LMS and the NALCS. And welcome back to the Flashwolves taking on Team Liquid in the second game of the MSI group stages, which is obviously taking place in Hanoi in Vietnam. Interesting draft, not one we were anticipating or expecting, but now the onus is on Team Liquid to step up and not let this Vladimir Azir Kaisa get to the late game.
Kane said in his interview that he wanted his team to play faster at this MSI. He wanted them to be able to trade blow for blow. We saw them successfully accomplish that against Fongvu. This is a team that also plays very quickly. Going into Flashwolves, I expected potentially that TL would just play a little bit more tried and true, but it looks like that MO is continuing.
But I do also feel that Team Liquid is also playing very Team Liquid. Like, they're investing resources towards the bot side of the map. Jensen is on a champion that he can look to make plays on. A little bit more towards the scaling side as well, but will spike very strong around the one item. And I just think that Impact will just have to sit and absorb as much pressure as possible. So, like, even though it's a little bit more early game focused and they have more tools and options in the early game, it still feels like very Team Liquid in my eyes.
I mean, that line, Impact will have to absorb pressure. I've heard that all year long. You know, it's just something that's very important. And I just want to put some numbers to something you mentioned, Spawn. When Team Liquid took down Fongvu Buffalo, at 15 minutes, they had an average gold lead of 1,000. They only conceded 4 towers. They got 80% of the dragons, and they won in an average game time of 28 minutes. There was a lot of negative fan sentiment based on how the skirmishes played out. But I was fairly impressed that Team Liquid, they didn't overexpose themselves and they did win the crucial objectives to take the Series 3-0.
And I think something often neglected is if a team runs at you in your jungle and fights you, oftentimes the best response is to fight back. So yes, the game's got down and dirty, but I haven't seen Fongfu play a clean game yet unless they're running over their opponents. TL certainly did not let that happen in their qualifying match.
Now, the one concern that I drew from that series was Team Liquid's ability to set up plays and be proactive. They were excellent at punishing Fongfu Buffalo for a lot of the mistakes that they made, but like in Game 3 when they tried to set up the tower dive, they were overzealous. They tried too hard to force something, and I want to see this Team Liquid just be a little cleaner in when they're trying to force things, because I think they have a lot of options with this Team Liquid composition, and I want to see how well they can enable this bot side of the map.
Because I don't think fans are critical of the class of players, maybe outside of Impact at times. However, it is that stylistic choice of being reactionary that we do not want to see emerge in this current meta. SKT was just punished for it by one of the best in the world in G2. See whether Flash Wolves can do the same.
And even more importantly in this game, Spawn, you cannot be reactionary to a Vladimir, Azir, Kaisa. We're 3 minutes in, the laning phase is going literally as anticipated. As Flash Wolves starting to shove forward both top and middle, some early backs already. Betty has already grabbed himself that cull in the bottom lane and playing a little bit bold, anticipating a longer laning phase.
Well, the thing is, this is something that Spawn was talking about in the draft. We might not have time, as rather getting ganked.
Yeah, Pillar of Ice comes up, but really easy with those concrete shifting sands to escape for Rather.
So here, Xmithie just trying to alleviate some of the pressure in the mid lane as Akali, melee champion versus Azir, range champion, struggles a little bit during the early laning phases, but that will change once she hits level 6 and has a little bit more kill pressure.
And Rather is actually the player on loan from Griffin over in the LCK. Played with the game throughout 2017. Now, big control mage player. They do rely on him as that late game insurance policy, as would have been known in years past. However, still able to show aggression at time, has a very deep champion pool. Azir is one of his better picks, actually, and I'm very curious to see how TL's newest international member in Jensen is able to go toe-to-toe with him.
And so now I'm looking at in terms of where this pressure is being applied, because we can see towards the bot side of the map, something you mentioned in draft, Spawn, was that this Galio can be pretty effective against a short-range Lucian. Every time he tries to dash in, the risk of the knock-up and the taunt, very, very dangerous. And against the Braum, Galio has that extra bit of wave clear, so when paired up with a Kaisa, who typically can struggle in the laning phase, it actually helps her out a lot and actually allows them to have a push for a lot of the early laning phase. So while there is a bit of a deficit right now, there's obviously a big wave building up that Betty will catch and close that gap.
And I was curious that DoubleLift went with heal in this matchup, because it is one of those matchups that if you get caught out once, you know, maybe at level 6 paired with the Nocturne ultimate, you will get CC locked and you will probably fall down. Also, Lucian wants to be dashing forward. If you have that cleanse, you can absorb the taunt, look to outplay the knock-up that comes out of Galio. DoubleLift and CoreJJ obviously very happy to scale equally in this lane. They're going to be arguably stronger at that 1 and 2 item mark, so maybe looking to utilize that advantage, get around the map earlier is what I want to see out of this TL bottom lane.
So now my eyes move towards the junglers, because you can see that Xmithie, he recognized that he has pressure both bot and mid lane, so he looked for a bit of an invade. And Trundle can be very effective early trades. We see a fight in the bot lane.
All right, Betty's already flashed, and now ShiauC forced to flash as well. Xmithie got that Pillar of Ice. That's going to block out the Justice Punch. Interrupted as well. And ShiauC's able to escape, but for the exchange of an Ignite for 2 flashes.
Yeah, great pressure exuded on the bottom lane there. You can see that now with the big wave stacking in, teleport coming out of Jensen, they can look to push in mid lane and try and force them away or gain control over the bottom Rift Scuttle. I feel like so much of this game is going to be determined by early river control and ability to set up objective first, because we know that, you know, 7 to 10 minutes, these teams want to be looking at Infernal Dragon into potentially the Rift Herald.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because something that Spawn and I were talking about last night was 7 to 8 minutes every single game. Bugi looks for a gank bot. Without a doubt. He's going to do it every game. It's one of his most consistent patterns. It's largely because he's looking to play towards the Drake. Something that Spawn talks a lot about during the play-in stage, where they like to go for Drake into Rift Herald and try and secure these early objectives. So we're a minute to 2 minutes away. Level 6 is on the horizon. Keep your eyes on Bugi, as he will likely look for that play bot.
Yeah, start the clock. I'm going to be watching for it, but you know, we've had a lot of time to discuss anticipations and expectations for this comp, because when you look at the 6 teams in the MSI group stage, 3 of them are slower tempo, and 2 of them are playing right now, with Team Liquid and Flash Wolves liking to contest those objectives, liking to get through the laning phase. Is one of the big points you had in terms of preparation, Spawn. And it's going to be interesting to see those first Drake fights and those first Herald fights, because I'm nervous for Team Liquid if it doesn't go their way. How do they contest and stop Hanabi and Rather when they get to the team fight stage?
But I think that's what gives me confidence in the Team Liquid lineup, because I think that they are a little bit better at preparing them. And, you know, early ward in bottom side mid, the fact that they've secured the Scuttle Crab, they're stopping bases, trying to make lanes base at separate times, and then Impact took a very favorable trade to get the disjointed teleport. So Impact's going to be back off cooldown and has the ultimate available.
Tick-tock, 45 seconds early. Maybe this will throw Team Liquid off. No, that's a joke. The Paranoia is available here for Bugi. There's no flash for Betty or ShiauC. Getting closer to 8 minutes, but on cue, Flash Wolves have the game plan.
Double pink ward bottom side jungle. They don't have eyes on Xmithie at the moment, as well as the fact Impact's ultimate available. Making a play cross map against Gangplank is a danger.
Yeah, I think Team Liquid's very aware of the potential gank. If we spotted it in the VODs, it's very highly that Team Liquid spotted it in the VODs. And here we see the ulti. It's going to happen anyway.
Well, there we go. Just before 8 minutes, but the damage is so high. Now Flash Wolves are on the retreat. Needs to find the stun. That's Betty locked down. He's got no flash, remember. First blood picked up by CoreJJ.
And whilst they do it all the time, it doesn't always make it correct. TL scout the play, Impact drops the ult, and they get the kill.
Betty getting stuck in the wall. He looked like he was out, but a perfectly placed pillar from Xmithie secures the kill onto Betty, and Team Liquid lead with first blood.
I mean, you just got to give all credit to Team Liquid. Not only was Xmithie in place, they played it well. I initially thought the burst damage was very high and made me nervous, but Team Liquid, they knew exactly what they get. First blood and the dragon.
But this is why initial trade of summoner spells is so great for Team Liquid on the bottom map. They just had every advantage. And, you know, this is what a good draft gives you. If you've read the fact that they're going to go slow, you've counted out the first Nocturne ultimate, everything on track for this game to settle, you know, start to scale up, and not in the same fashion as G2, but 1-3-1 still can be enacted here to continue to secure farm.
So here we see Xmithie. He's trying to clear out a ward. Flash Wolves think that they've caught him out of position, so they go for the all-in. But the immediate follow-up from the bot lane of Team Liquid means that they can go for the 3 versus 3. Now, in all honesty, I don't think that should have resulted in a kill if it weren't for that perfectly placed pillar that just locks him in between the wall and the pillar. So really good stuff there from Xmithie to allow Team Liquid to find this first blood.
And of course, it's Betty that goes down the tip of the spear for Flash Wolves. The stats you're seeing on your screen are from the LMS and the LCS respectively. And we're looking at two of the heavy carries, the main carries for the respective teams. And you can see that DoubleLift, on average, higher CSD in his local league, higher goal difference, higher kill participation. And this is, of course, also because Flash Wolves had a more difficult split than usual. But it's DoubleLift and Team Liquid that have the advantage, and they've already kept Betty down.
Yeah, when you think about Flash Wolves, you're thinking about the team that comes through the LMS in first place. However, this is a second or third place LMS lineup. People had debates about whether AHQ was actually going to be able to take the split off a great end of season run. Flash Wolves actually came into both of their best of fives as maybe underdogs for the first time. And you can see right now they are once again going to have to play on that back foot.
Now, I appreciate the observers highlighting where the goal differences lie. You can see that while the Flash Wolves bot lane is struggling, Hanabi is still doing well towards the top side of the map. He's built up a pretty healthy CS advantage as we see a gank in the mid lane.
All right, Emperor's Divide does not push Jensen forward. Paranoia has already been used. Rather is going to be saved by Bugi. Now, Impact is... No, sorry, correction. Jensen was backing away. So we need to see if the cannon barrage was going to come down. Did not at the end of the day. Bugi close enough to save Rather's life.
I actually really like this play from the side of Team Liquid. Rather not running the cleanse means it's actually very easy for Akali to set up the gank with the ultimate. And because he used his stealth with the W, Rather's ultimate actually made connection to no one. And because of the amount of mobility that Jensen has, he can very easily dive and duck and maneuver around these big CC utilities. So I like the setup. Unfortunately, they couldn't quite convert it into a kill.
However, they will be able to potentially convert this into a Rift Herald. So both early game objectives uncontested off the back end of good Xmithie counter gank.
Yeah, every single objective. First Blood, first Dragon, first Rift Herald. You can already see some of the backs starting to come in as we're 11 minutes in. Team Liquid have got just over 800 gold in the advantage. And with the help of the Rift Herald, they should be able to put some additional pressure in one of these lanes. Outside of Impact being bullied a little in the top lane, I still think he's going to have some additional bonus gold from that GP barrels.
And lanes are matchup dependent as well. So I think that Impact at this stage to be down 20 CS whilst having kill contribution in the bottom lane gank and playing very safe on the top side of the map has never really been in danger. CoreJJ, however.
Ooh, a little bit of damage. Xmithie's got the blast cone behind him, takes the blast cone. Pillar of Ice is available, and if you look at the minimap, Bugi's making his way through the jungle. It's just going to be flirting with danger and no further follow-up.
But all I was saying is I think Impact's in a fine position right now.
Sure.
He's going to be able to side lane successfully. You said that's the role. His ultimate is well and truly online, and you can see that Flash Wolves haven't really found an avenue yet into the game, even expending 2 of the Nocturne.
And I feel like both these teams are very playbook focused. When they have a lead, they're actually very confident with what they're supposed to do with that lead. But when things start to go wrong and the game starts to fall apart, sometimes they can struggle to find ways to take back in, because similarly to SKT, they won't necessarily take risks. They won't take those 50-50 plays and assume that they can just outplay their opponents. And this means that, like, I'm looking at Flash Wolves now, wondering what ways can they look to try and come back in. And that ultimately comes down to this big wombo combo team fight that they have.
Yeah.
Nocturne, Galio, Vladimir, Azir are 2 items. This powerhouse can swing a dragon or a baron fight very quickly in that.
Well, the gold is completely even, 12.5. First big items, Luden's Echo for Rather, Gunblade for Jensen, Blade of the Rune King for DoubleLift, but it's Team Liquid that are sort of in the driving seat. You know, they've got the objectives, they seem to have the answer for now, and this is a Team Liquid that, you know, had to reverse sweep their finals to qualify. They've got 3 consecutive LCS titles in a row. This is their second MSI appearance, and all eyes are going to be on Jensen and CoreJJ, the 2 big roster swaps coming into the season.
And in my opinion, one of the big ways in which they made this reverse sweep happen was by enabling and playing through their bot lane. And they are doing exactly that. Huge props to Xmithie, finding ways to punish Bugi in the early game. They're committing by bringing this Red Peril down towards the bot side to give Impact the freedom to now move out of that 1v1 and then move DoubleLift elsewhere on the map. And it just feels like they are enabling their star carry the way in which they should be.
But we'll see whether this is going to be a counterpunch from the Flash Wolves. No pulling out of the play. So now they've got themselves a 30 CS lead. Play onto Rather again.
All right, there's the paranoia. Boogie's going to be trying to help out Rather. That's a dash forward there from Jensen. Boogie's going low to DoubleLift. That gets on the board. Second kill of the game and the first for Dia.
And Liquid just playing this game on the front foot, being able to rotate up through that forest meant that there was no prior vision established for this Flash Wolves lineup. They know exactly where Flash Wolves want to go, and they're cutting them off every time.
And look at the timing. Mountain Drake available immediately after Boogie goes down. That's 2 paranoias in a row used defensively on a champion like Nocturne, where you really want to be going forward.
And Trevor, I have a feeling that the Flash Wolves thought this laning phase was going to go for a little bit longer, because they bought a Cull. They've got themselves a Comet on Azir, and they've gone Luden's Echo. This is much more of a short, sharp trade kind of build. However, Flash Wolves TL has actually pushed the tempo quite nicely, and now this laning phase, it's done.
Yeah, and now we get to see what TL can do once they've got this kind of an advantage. So I think this is a big mistake from Rather and Bugi. It looked like they were trying to answer towards the bot side, but the reality was their bot lane was pushed underneath their tower. Team Liquid was naturally going to have a numbers advantage. So trying to get vision control over your bot side of the jungle was just asking Team Liquid to engage upon you, and you're just asking DoubleLift to kill you and take away that free gold.
And DoubleLift will say, yes, please, may I have some more? It's a 2,000 gold lead, 6 plates to 2. Infernal and Mountain already underneath the Team Liquid's belt, with the next Drake being Infernal as well. And this is just Team Liquid in complete control. I'll remind you that the analyst desk all predicted Team Liquid to win this game many hours ago, anticipating that Team Liquid's ability to play the map, to play the team fights, to respond to Flash Wolves' playbook is being seen as expected.
And I think it's one of those things where we talk a lot about G2 and IG style versus SKT and Team Liquid style, and Flash Wolves fall under the same style of Team Liquid and SKT. And one of the big expectations was that Flash Wolves would not be able to play that style to the level with which Team Liquid could. And with the players that they drafted into this team at the beginning of the year, they wanted to perform internationally. They wanted to show that they can look to challenge one of those international titles. And I feel like we're starting to see the growth of this team. While they are still playing through DoubleLift, while they are still focusing their attention towards the bot side of the map, what they are also doing is looking to play a quicker game. And it is important that they can do that considering G2 and IG are at this tournament.
Yeah, and this part of the game sucks for Flash Wolves now. You've got a top lane, long lane Azir, trying to catch the wave as deep as possible, but not wanting a wave to build up. Turret dive always going to be on the table for this Akali. And you can see time and time again, Flash Wolves are trying to duck their head into the bottom side jungle as well. Take away some of that vision that is starting to accrue around the Dragon area. I just want to point out how well Team Liquid have set up bottom vision control as well, and just how safe Impact is on this split push.
Yeah, and this is going to allow Impact to claw back that deficit. Still down 25 CS, but it has been 25 CS for 10 plus minutes. He's got the Trinity Force completed into the Proto Belt, as well as that Hex Drinker. Going to be doubly effective, obviously, against the Vlad and the Azir. And you can see DoubleLift and CoreJJ applying pressure in the mid lane before moving top. Now that is exposed, and that means that top tower is going to take a hammering.
Yeah, so let's kind of look at next steps for Team Liquid, because what they want to do is maintain mid control and inevitably take that mid tower down. But in order for them to do that, they need to gain vision control in the enemy jungle so that Flash Wolves are forced to play defensively, and the risk of a flank on that mid tier 1 is a real possibility, which is hard to do unless you take that tier 1 down. So what you'll often see is them push in mid, move up through the river, and then join up with the Akali when there's a wave there to siege onto that tower and move back and forth between the two.
However, due to the nature of these teams, I only expect it to go for a couple minutes more. It is about a minute and a half away from the next Infernal Dragon spawning. I think it is still crucial for them to protect some of that bottom side vision.
Yeah, and let's see whether or not Flash Wolves are going to be able to contest 1-2 items on the way for those teamfight carries in the solo lanes, so it's definitely going to be helpful. And of course, for Flash Wolves, Spawn, this is also a team that had to rebuild. You know, Flash Wolves were not the de facto favorites coming into the MSI, qualifiers. They had to take down Mad in their finals. They had to qualify through AHQ the previous round. And this, while it is the 4th MSI the Flash Wolves have attended, it is a very different looking Flash Wolves to seasons past.
Yeah, the exodus started with Kaisa in 2017, then moved into, people like Maple and Sword Art, also going over to the LPL, new coaching staff coming in. Same carry players in Hanabi and Betty, they were already starting to come on board with this team. But Rather and ShiauC, in my opinion, are good replacements for the members lost. They have shown domestically and at MSI playing so far that they play this stage of the game quite nicely, and I think it kind of suits the style that Flash Wolves' already existing carries wanted to play.
And I need to see more from Flash Wolves in the hype video at the beginning of the day. They said, Taipei, we're coming for you. Flash Wolves have never missed the semi-finals of MSI, and right now they're being pushed down. They're still 2,000 gold behind Team Liquid. 2 dragons down, a tower down, and that Infernal Drake is coming up shortly. Look at the vision, look at the posturing around mid lane. We're getting set up for another fight.
And their combined costs away from that 2-item spike that you wanted, Vedius, to be able to contest, but you can see still confident enough to walk out and check vision.
This is a dangerous spot for Flash Wolves, but they don't want to give up this Infernal Drake. They have no vision, and look at how TL have set up the minimap right now. Notice how the Akali is pushing out the bottom lane, but staying towards that side of the map so that he can join should the event that a fight kick off, and the teleport and ultimate available for Impact. They're now looking for ShiauC. Not able to find it.
Yeah, gets cut off by that Pillar of Ice. Betty's trying to wave clear mid. That tower is so close to going down. But with the objective being up, that is the focus, and that is what both Flash Wolves and TL are focusing on.
And just there is why we talk about mid lane priority. The fact that Betty had to show on mid lane, DoubleLift was able to duck into Fog of War, meant they get to start up the Dragon for free, see whether the fight comes.
Jensen's making his way up from the Tri-Bush. That's the Paranoia already thrown down. Dragon is now being interrupted, and the teleport comes out from Impact. Impact finds himself in the middle of the melee. He's in trouble. The second Infernal is picked up by Xmithie. Now CoreJJ is backing away. Emperor's Divide throws Team Liquid aside. Jensen is on to Betty. Putting the damage down as ShiauC is already out. Jensen finds the second of the fight, and now Bugi's running for his life on the wrong side of the rift. Hanabi gets tagged by a Winter's Bite and will pick up Xmithie with at least a transfusion. The stun comes down, and Jensen picks up another.
They get the Dragon, they get the kills, and TL now in firm control of this game.
Flash Wolves, the way in which they approached this fight was disastrous, throwing absolutely everything at Impact. The weakest member, the guy that is branded as absorbing pressure, and he absorbed 5 members beautifully. A stopwatch at the perfect time to allow the rest of TL to reposition and collapse on the Flash Wolves.
Yeah, it feels like the ready check just wasn't done. Who has stopwatch? Who's got the defensive item? Because he teleports in an awkward position. He immediately drops ult. stopwatches away, still has himself the defensive item of the Hex Trinket as well. You can see that Flash will split across terrain, can never get 5 members together, and TL just start walking over
And I
them.
think that's the biggest thing, Spawn. The fact that Flash Wolves initially looked like a cohesive unit, all grouped up, they then immediately split apart. Akali, Lucian, this is their playground. Oh, 2v2, 3v3, small choke points. Let us dance. Let us have that duel. Every time we're going to come out on top.
3,000 gold in the lead. The mid tower fell, the Infernal fell, and Team Liquid, despite having that composition that you go, ooh, don't make mistakes early, they haven't. They've played flawlessly. They've read Flash Wolves like a book, and Team Liquid have all the answers.
And this isn't the first time MSI that this has happened. I feel like game 1 of Vega Squadron versus Flash Wolves, Vega also did a very nice job of reading what the Flash Wolves were wanting to do. Flash Wolves seem to be that team that takes a little bit more to get going. And this is why I think a lot of analysts also had high expectations of TL coming in, because this isn't a quick-paced game, and they've led every decision-making point and just shut Flash Wolves out of what they want to accomplish. This is a team, when they play the game on their terms, do not make those mistakes.
22 minutes in, 2 items completed already on the side of Team Liquid. You've got the Executioner's Calling as well as Hex Trinker. Still looking to be upgraded for impact, but Morella Nomicon, Black Cleaver, Blade of the Rune King, DoubleLift and crew are going to be very content to push towards this top lane. Look at the minimap. 4 members stacked going up, and Jensen has TP if needed.
Yeah, the Unsealed Spellbook gives them a lot of flexibility, meaning that Jensen can be moved from the far side lane to the close side lane. And with Impact's TP being on cooldown, he's going to apply this pressure towards the Azir down the bot side of the map, who's now going for a Luden's Echo into like Banshee's Veil, Berserker's Greaves, bit of a haphazard all over the place build. Will give him the attack speed that he wants, but it's giving so much freedom for Team Liquid to set up full vision control around the Baron, because Azir is miles away from the fight.
And we just have another game where they've forfeited all form of control. They haven't been able to pressure Team Liquid away from objectives. The one time they tried, they get wiped in the team fight after the objective falls down, just not getting there early enough. And once again, you've got to applaud Team Liquid's cohesiveness. That's 5 members recalling after getting control of an area, back on with pink wards littered throughout every inventory. They know exactly how they want to close out this game.
And take a look at this. Very confident call here from Team Liquid. As the teleport is going to come into the Baron pit, CoreJJ steps forward. Reminder of how different CoreJJ has had an impact on Team Liquid. He has the fight sets up, not going to go just yet. ShiauC's instantly blown up. CoreJJ manages to find the kill.
And this is perfect, excuse me, from Team Liquid, because the worst case scenario for Team Liquid is they're grouped up in a small Baron pit, allowing this full wombo combo to rip them apart. So instead, they bait the Baron and turn and fight. They never give that opportunity. They now have a numbers advantage, and they're looking for more picks.
It's starting to get ugly here.
Yeah, and it has been for a little while, I think, Spawn. Bugi, once again, defensive paranoia. He's only used it on the retreat. He's only used it to fall back. And what I was trying to set up just before is that, you know, there's a lot of eyes on this Team Liquid roster. They won both LCS titles last year. And after MSI, when, you know, Ole ended up benching himself quite dramatically, there were changes coming into the 2019 season. And while TL found regional success, they now need to step up on an international stage with Jensen, with CoreJJ, and with a lot of fans at home being extremely critical of everything that they do.
Yeah, certainly. And I think that Jensen is someone that has proven himself on the international stage. Hold that for the fight.
Well, he's got another opportunity. The taunt will come out from Xmithie. Look at that pillar of ice. Jensen goes all the way back in. Rather, he's chunked so low. ShiauC goes down as Jensen finds yet another kill. Hanabi forced a Proto Belt to safety. And of course, the ShiauC once again going down. TL are using Baron as a perfect bait.
Well, honestly, this is just great use of vision control. Because they have so much vision in the river, it means that Flash Wolves have no idea what's going on. They've abandoned the bot lane completely because they've ran out of teleport. So they've just been awkwardly dancing around this objective, looking for something to get them the way back into the game, and Team Liquid don't give it to them. The moment they overstep, they punish the mistake. And again, this is what Team Liquid is so good at. You make a decision, they read it, they punish it, and then they snowball from there.
And an equally scary gold graph as we saw in game 1. It's felt a little bit more slower, but the inevitability has still been there for the North American lineup. As Vedi pointed out, this is just the ability to hold and control deep vision. They're right in the jungle right now of Flash Wolves. Nowhere near the Baron, but they're all ready to turn. They're not allowing the Wombo Combo Comp to take effect.
Yeah, it's beautiful stuff from the side of Team Liquid. And you can just see on the minimap how all the side lanes are just kind of crashing into each other, because for Team Liquid, they're fine. They have the gold lead. They get to threaten the Baron, whereas Flash Wolves are just losing more and more and more resources.
And just perfect execution there from Jensen. He's 3-0-2 on the Akali. Got himself that bouncy. DoubleLift 2-0-4 on the Lucian. And the man I've spoken a lot about, CoreJJ on his Braum, 2-0-3. It's just TL are playing, they're reading Flash Wolves and they're responding and they're setting up the proactive plays very, very well. With Baron now as well, and of course the fact that Jensen's pushing the top lane, Impact's down bottom with teleporting Cannon Barrage. This is now just a 1-3-1. It's going to be TL's game to win.
And it's not flashy, but this is a team putting another team to the grind. And when you saw the veterans added to the TL lineup, I think this is what everyone hoped that you would see on the international stage. This is what success looks like when a TL branded team comes out, controls the pace, and just shuts you out.
And of course, the question we're going to find out as the day plays out
Desperation here.
is whether or not it's going to be quick enough. There goes Bugi, he goes in. Hanabi completes the TP, and this will be just in time for the Guardian Angels to come back up. That's Hanabi already down. ShiauC's running for his life. Jensen dashes all the way in, waits for the taunt to come out. He turns his attention over to Rather. Rather escapes with his life for now, burning down from the Ignite. DoubleLift takes the tower. I think the Ignite takes down Rather. That is 4 members of Flash Wolves down.
Perfect team fight from the side of Team Liquid. Flash Wolves went for the desperation play. They knew they were going to lose this game, but it was not enough. 5 members still alive. Team Liquid look to get their first win of MSI.
And you could see they got the pieces together, but they could not make it work. TL will push the Nexus.
Yeah, Betty's going to get jumped on for the time being. Jensen fancies himself a dive. Not right now as the Nexus is being focused. The North American LCS Team Liquid will take down Flash Wolves to open up MSI groups. What felt like a slow start ended in the complete opposite. From Baron to finish in 2.5 minutes, it was decisive, it was clean, and it was all Team Liquid.
And keeping the average game time below that 30 minutes. Whilst we keep saying slow, methodical, as you mentioned, as soon as they get the advantage, they are confident enough to push for the end. Flash Wolves didn't throw the same punches as Fongbu, but it looked like they had equal opportunities to win this game because it was a shutout.
I mean, what for me really stood out is that when Fongbu played against Team Liquid, there were moments where you were like, oh, if Fongbu executed a little bit better, maybe they could have actually pulled out a win or two against Team Liquid, maybe. But here, it felt like the Team Liquid were constantly forcing their opposition into making bad decisions and then punishing them. And this is the growth that I like to see from Team Liquid, because while it's not perhaps the same proactivity like a G2 would bring to the table, it is still a play that forces their opposition into getting the style that TL wants.
If you can execute the defensive play flawlessly, maybe you can contain proactive. Those are questions we'll find out later. To get more insight on how Team Liquid won today, let's hear from the Safe Farm Analyst Desk.
Thank you very much. Quick shot. That's exactly right. A win, W in the win column for Team Liquid. It's going to feel good here against the Flash Wolves. However, it was an expected victory. The first thing I want to call back to is the stylistic mismatch that we had kind of, previewed here. And it looked like it played out pretty much to the T.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing for Flash Wolves is they're not like a better late game team than Team Liquid. So we were looking more at early game, but that's no longer where they have their strengths with this new lineup. So it ended up being a fairly slow early game, as we expected as well, which is only in favor of Team Liquid. And we were just kind of waiting for one opening, and it actually happened in just a 2v2 trade where Betty has to flash out, ShiauC has to flash out as well. And this now means that they can't actually do anything on this bottom side where they have a Galio pick that they want to try and use to set up a gank with the Nocturne. When he ends up showing up, it's the Trundle they jump. And that's not okay.
Follow-up play comes through. Excellent Trundle
No flash.
Yeah, what are you going to do in this situation? So all this composition that Flash Wolves had entirely based around Nocturne being able to set up into the bottom side of the map, erased. It's gone. Just based off that 2v2 there. So DoubleLift coming up strong in that matchup.
When we're thinking about concepts for how Team Liquid could kind of subvert what we kind of saw being the inevitable late game scenario, the couple that we posed were aggressive jungle champion from Bugi to allow him to like really snowball the game. It's a Nocturne, so we know that's not going to be happening here. The other one was trying to leverage Hanabi, right?
Yep.
Who can be that big carry player. And the Vlad versus GP matchup, just so the fans at home know, like this was Vlad picked blind as the top laner, and it's one of GP's worst matchups. So it's a self-counter pick from Impact. But this is an Impact champion, the GP. It allows him to play a carry that can fit this meta, but can ult bot lane and help with the standard style that TL like to play. So they're still happy enough to go for this matchup that's a losing matchup. The moment that all these plays that we saw in our reel there happen bot side, you couldn't actually win harder. The Vlad was up 15 CS, but you now Nocturne ult's on cooldown. The first one hasn't been used well. 3 minutes later till that ult comes in. They were never actually able to get anything out of Vlad running over GP, which can definitely happen in the 1v1, and they lost using the ult bot side. So that was where it was too much, and then from there, just kind of plain sailing for TL.
And that's what I kind of liked about this game is I feel like there's a lot of things we can take away. There's a lot of things we expected coming into the group stages here. We expected GP to have insane priority for Impact. Not sure if it was going to be into bad matchups or only picked into like good matchups for him. In this case, it was just picked last into the Vladimir. So again, we see the high priorities there. We got again to confirm how flash rolls in the early game are not as explosive as they've been in the past. And we got to see Team Liquid say, we don't need to play like we did against PvB.
No.
We don't have to run into and take every single fight because Flash Wolves were not forcing fights against them. And we got to see the LCS-style Team Liquid in this first game here.
Right, as a matter of fact, perhaps the game-deciding fight came not too long after that bot lane skirmish here around the Infernal Drake. Again, the Flash Wolves coming in on a teleporting GP, but it's going to be a near wipe.
Yeah, they also try to Nocturne ult onto the GP and everything, and then Galio dies before he gets the ult off, and Hanabi hasn't really gotten the flank off, and
Jensen just gets free hits on Betty. Like the entire structure of that fight was chaotic, sure for both teams, but specifically for Flash Wolves coming in a deficit, they need to be able to protect Betty coming in front to back, and he just sees the mid laner like, oh, I guess we're done here.
Yeah, and when you play against Braum, Trundle, GP, you're not against any hard engage right there, but you're against a lot of really good abilities that can zone you if you're trying to run at them. And when they're engaged onto GP, it's Flash Wolves trying to run at Team Liquid. And then this composition is just so good as you said, protecting backline as well. And like you slow down basically 24/7 because you're either in a GP ulti, in a Trundle pillar, or in a Braum ult. Like you're never actually able to run at normal speed. So it's really difficult to kill anyone on Team Liquid side.
Now, this was the first showing of the two teams that have been talked about as maybe competing for that 4 slot. TL gets the better of Flash Wolves this time around, but I kind of want to get a sense of, based on what you've seen here and what we saw from TL in the play-ins, on how they might be able to roll this forward against that top 3, because this same composition, perhaps, against a G2 doesn't look the same, I'm sure.
Here's my takeaway, is that if you just focus on the TL side of the draft they selected, they played it well. I think the opposition level is something that we expect is going to be lower than those 3 teams, so we can't really say X versus Y here, but if I'm just looking at TL, just like how I feel about them a few days ago, I think there's a lot to like here, but I mean, the rubber has to hit the road against those big teams, and we're going to see that before too long.
Very happy with the bottom lane. We wanted DoubleLift and CoreJJ to look good, and they did.
Fair enough. We won't see the true test for TL until tomorrow, but we'll see what the victorious bot laner thinks about that game as he's standing by with ShiauC.
Thank you very much, guys. I'm here with DoubleLift after Team Liquid opens up their MSI with a very impressive victory over the Flash Wolves. Now, DoubleLift, you guys were favored in this matchup beforehand, yet it was incredibly clean, incredibly convincing. What does it mean to you to open up MSI with a win in that fashion?
Definitely feels really good. Like, they picked all scaling team comp, so if kind of like the memes that were really slow and like we're not aggressive enough, we're not proactive enough early game, like if we lost to that kind of team comp, it would be really depressing. So I'm glad we were able to, get small leads everywhere and then turn those into big leads.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. Also, your coach Kane said, well, we'll have to kind of work on the fact that we are a bit slower than some of the other teams here and we want to be more aggressive. In the past, though, a lot of time when teams have wanted to change just before an international tournament, it hasn't always been great, or it's a hard thing to do. So what's your approach to that?
Well, I think the main thing is just like you should never expect like a big transformation with a team or even a player. Like no one is just like could do a complete 180. It's gonna take like years and years of playing to make those big changes. But I think what people see and like between, for example, like G2, they just like explosive, super insane outplay playstyle where they just take a lot of fights and they win through lane. Like that kind of dominance, it's really not that far off from every team. Like every team just makes like really small changes and it makes like a really big difference in the long run. So we focus on like getting the small things down perfectly versus trying to make drastic changes. And so I think we play our play style really cleanly.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just works out.
I mean, I have to concur. It has been looking very impressive. And of course, this is such a hyped roster coming into this MSI. You've also said, well, this is the time to win internationally. This is the year. What are the points about TL that, in your mind, are so good that are going to bring you a lot of wins at MSI and hopefully a final?
Well, I mean, this MSI, we have Jensen and Core, and they're basically just Smurfs. They're just so good. Like, they do everything right. And I like our team in general, like, I feel like overall we do almost everything right. And like, in our view of the game, like, if we can't, like, play at the same pace as, like, some of the other teams and do the plays that they do, but, like, the plays that we want to do and, the stuff that we want to work on, I think we're basically, like, almost exactly where we want to be. And, yeah, I mean, the pieces are just there for us. Like, I'm really confident. I think we're the best team at the tournament, and we just have to go out there and win.
Fantastic. I love to hear it. Final question. You have Fangbu Buffalo later as well, but a lot of people are looking towards tomorrow. Matchup versus G2 and versus IG. What are your expectations for those, probably some of the hardest games you'll play in the group stage?
We're going to stomp them. Okay,
fantastic. I love the confidence. I love the fact that you played so convincingly here in Game 1. Congratulations, DoubleLift. TL taking home their first win at MSI. We're going to take a short break, but when we come back, it will be the home team, Fangbu Buffalo, up